Hi guys, welcome to Chart, where we chat about art. Today we'll be talking about controversies around historical objects.
We are Finn, Mara, Javier and Christie, and thank you for tuning in to listen to Chart Podcast. We are so stoked to have you here with us and that you take some time out of your day to hear us discuss any things that are happening in the art world. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Let's roll.
I'm going to hand it over, I think, to Javier.
Yeah. So today's episode is about controversies around art objects. So I am going to talk about Elgin Marbles, also known as the Parthenon Marbles. And Christie is going to talk about...
I'm going to be talking about two recent Christie sales, which one is like a tablet that has the world's oldest text print on it. It was sold for £1.3 million.
Is it the Hammurabi Code?
I don't think anyone to know the name.
Good research. They studied the Hammurabi Code on fucking Christie's. What?
No. I think it has like another name.
No one knows what you're saying.
It was in the
Everyone
museum
knows about the
of the Bible.
Not everybody knows.
No, I don't really know. I don't know.
Uncultured swine.
No one knows what you're talking about.
No. Okay, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that happened in 20th of May, and another one is their recent sale on the 29th of June, which is two sculptures that has like controversies around how it was taken away during the civil war within the Igbo community in Africa.
The Elgin Marbles, if you ever have been to London, are the Greek best known statues that are in the British Museum. They are all taken from the Parthenon. So if you go to the Parthenon, you will find it sadly empty. And they are nowadays very controversial and it's a very debated topic because ever since, I didn't know this, I thought it was like a newly open debate because of globalization and all that, but ever since the moment this guy called Thomas Bruce took them, it's being illegal. Like this was in 1812 and it was illegal that he took them. So imagine it. So the story is that in 1801, this man called Thomas Bruce, 7th Earl of Elgin, travels to Greece.
Okay. I thought it was called Thomas something Elgin, but now he's just the Earl of Elgin.
He's the Earl of Elgin. His name is Thomas Bruce. And he's the 7th Earl of Elgin. Basically what happened, this guy was appointed the ambassador between Great Britain and the Ottoman Empire, and he traveled to Greece with the idea of studying the Greek statues and asserting the damage, because a century prior, during the Great Turkish War between the Holy Alliance and the Ottoman Empire, they've been very damaged. And shortly before he got there, Parthenon was used for storage of powder because the Ottomans didn't care, and it blew up because it was powder. And
gunpowder.
Yeah, like gunpowder.
That's so rude.
I know. Like, why would you choose that one building as a gunpowder? It blew up, and so it was very damaged and all. Our boy Thomas Bruce went there with a troupe of artists and experts in history, but this was 19th century, so just imagine. And they were meant to assert the damage and make drawings and casts and all that. He ended up taking them, like all of them, and bringing them back to England. And the funny thing is that when he did, the Parliament was like, we didn't agree to this. But then he presented a letter that was supposedly signed by the Sultan, Selim III of the Ottoman Empire, saying, yes, you can take this, because remember that Greece was part of the Ottoman Empire back then here. So the funny thing is that that letter doesn't exist right now. There's an extensive evidence of every document and data around that period from the Ottoman Empire, and that letter doesn't exist. Nobody can find a letter signed by the Sultan, and the only copy that exists is an Italian copy that everyone thinks is forfeit, even the British experts. And it's somewhere in the British Museum exhibit, apparently. I've never seen it. But the point is that this was illegal already in an age where people could just take whatever they wanted and bring them back home. So basically what we're talking about is when you go to the Greek Parthenon, which is the biggest building in the Acropolis, and it's a temple to Athena.
What is the Acropolis?
The Acropolis is this hill in the middle of Athens, and because it was the highest point in the entire city, it was used by Pericles, which was Athenian king in the 5th century before Christ. And what he did was he celebrated that he defeated the Persians by building this huge complex of temples and ceremonial buildings and monuments and stuff in this hill. And most known of them was the Parthenon, because it was a temple to Athena, which is the god of Athens. That's because Athena, Athens. And it was filled with statues all around the perimeter of the building and in the pediment, which is that when you look at a Greek temple, there's this triangular element in the facade, and it's empty when you look at it now because all the statues are in the British Museum. But they were meant to be. It was meant to be filled with statues that would, organically be shaped as a triangle in the composition. So like they would be like bending over or like lying down or whatever, and it was meant for it to like organically fit that triangular space. When you go now to the British Museum and you walk into the gallery where they're exhibited, they are exhibited in that order so that you can kind of see the triangular shape, but they're just hanging there. So going back to site specificity, they're completely taken out of their element, and you just have to guess that they were meant to be there. You have to imagine it. It's very heartbreaking to go to Athens now and see the Parthenon empty. It's just a building now, all the ornaments and all the effort put into it by the Greeks is just gone, and in the British Museum in this room.
Have you been to the museum in Athens?
I haven't, but I know that they only have a small portion of.
They have the free space, like where the marbles should be.
Yeah.
But like, there's obviously nothing there. But they've left the free space like symbolically.
Yeah.
In a room where you can walk around and you can look up, but there's nothing there.
That's heartbreaking.
Like that, because they are like, hope this is, another sort of plea for us to get them back. We have the space and,
right.
like adequate place to keep them. Because for a long time they were saying that the reason why we should, like an argument for not returning them was because Athens is very polluted. They wouldn't have the money to like take care of them.
I'm going to go there now into the reasons why people want to keep in the UK and why they want to bring it back to Athens, because they're very funny, especially the ones for keeping in the UK. So, of course, this sparked the debate during the 20th century, because apparently there were so many, I didn't know there were this many cases of vandalism and damage to the statues. Like in the 1960s, especially, I don't know what happened there, the swinging 60s, a lot of vandals would like write things on the statues.
In the museum?
In the museum, because in the 1960s, you didn't have as many security cameras, and you probably depended on someone to be there watching people, and the British Museum was probably packed with tourists and visitors, so you couldn't watch everyone. So a small percentage of them would be dickheads that would go and write like, oh, Paul was here in the statue. Then a bunch of schoolboys, apparently in a school trip, broke the leg of a centaur. A sky, I think they're called sky glasses.
Skylight.
So one of them fell when it was in a certain gallery and like completely destroyed the front of a statue. Things like that. So over this, like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, and because I don't know.
Maybe that's
bad engineering. I don't know.
I think that's like God being like, maybe return them.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that after all of this, a lot of reasons, like valid reasons in my opinion, started like popping up to send them back to Greece. And many of them had to do with how it was illegal. They were illegally taken. They were basically robbed from them. How they're not exhibited in their original place. How many other pieces of the Parthenon of the Parthenon statues and other marbles in the Acropolis were given back to Greece from other countries like Italy, Germany. All of them had a piece of it. They all gave it back. The British Museum is like, right? And the reason is great. The first reason is that someone did a study, and apparently like around 5 million people visit the British Museum a year, and only 1 point something million visit the Acropolis. So they argue, well, more people are going to watch it here than in the Acropolis. It's like, yes, let's put a pyramid
Because
in
you've
New
got
York.
so much more shit that you stole from
Yeah,
everyone
that's
else.
like-
I don't think anyone would go to the British Museum if they didn't have anything.
Stuff.
Yeah, like the amount of Chinese tourists that goes in, it's genuinely because they want to see shit that they've stolen from them.
Basically. And that's another thing. They say, well, if we have to give back our Elgin marbles, every museum would have to give back everything they have, so museums wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And like, fine. And things like that. Like basically the argument of the British Museum to keep them is that more people see them here and we took them, so no. And that's it. And then the whole argument of please giving them back is, and the funny thing is that they did a poll about this, and 32% of people in the UK said, yes, we want them to go back to Greece. And only 28 around that said, no, we want to keep them. The government said, well, let's keep them then. It seems
There's the other 50%.
they didn't
Yeah.
vote, I guess.
They're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. They're like, marvels? That is the thing. So now that is an interesting debate to have, especially since we here are all colonists except Christie in heritage and history. Because I remember that I would, I didn't think that much about this the first time that I came to London. I would be like, great, I can see the Greek stuff without going to Greece. But I remember that then one day I was in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and they have this kind of iron railing that separates the atrium from the altar in the cathedral.
Yeah.
And they have that part from a Spanish cathedral in Valladolid, which is a city in Spain. And when I saw it there, I was like, like outraged. I was like, how dare you steal my property? Yeah.
Put that little hand going.
So, yeah. I was like 15 or something. And that was the first time that I thought, maybe this is a dick move, to keep these things out of their original countries. But then it's the debate that another point that the British Museum people, the supporters of the British Museum keeping them said, is that most of the times these antiquities come from countries that are very unstable and cannot guarantee their safety.
Yeah.
So imagine everyone in every piece of Ur and all these Mesopotamian civilizations in the British Museum was given back to Iraq and Syria and all these countries. That would have been unwise given what happened.
Oh, the tablets from Iraq that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most of the ancient, very ancient pieces come from an area that is widely unstable when you talk about politically, and probably Iran is the safest and most stable country that has produced Mesopotamian and Assyrian and all these civilizations artifacts. So that is a debate to be taken into account, I guess.
I mean, this debate of the marbles has been going on my whole life. I've been hearing about it, and from time to time there'll be renewed interest in potentially sending them back, because obviously they ask all the time, could we please get them back? I think it seems a bit unfair. I think the argument I used to be told was they wouldn't be able to take care of it well, which obviously isn't true. And I'm sure if they had it would be their prized possession.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why we have them. If we return them, how will they take care of them? And we could do casts, and they could just have the casts of them. But it's then why can't we have the casts? I agree that it's crazy to do a poll and figure out how many people go and visit the British Museum, when the British Museum is literally, you go there in great part to go and see them.
Yeah,
that's crazy, because if they were elsewhere, people would travel there to see them.
If you would take the Rosetta Stone, the Elgin Marbles, and the Saturn Who helmet and things like that from the museum, what would you see in there? Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you took them back to original countries, there's nothing left to see in the British Museum.
I mean, with the British Museum, they should just put British things in it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's so interesting that you said that when they were taken, there was outrage, because I feel that the interest in historical integrity, or keeping things where they should be and all that, only came, at least in England, around the Victorian era, or late-ish Victorian era. People started to think, oh, like this relic or whatever is in, let's take care of it, let's not repaint over it, let's keep it in a safe space. So it's interesting, even then they were like, that's madness.
Of course not in the level of today, but it is interesting to see that already then some people, and I mean some people in the British Parliament, were like, this is not legal, what are you doing?
And they didn't really need that much. I feel they didn't need much convincing if they just gave over fake paper.
Well, apparently there's a letter of Thomas Bruce talking to some colleague and saying, so I asked the British Parliament if they want me to make drawings on casts of the statues, or if they just want the statues. And they were like, we don't need the drawings.
We're just going to have the statue.
Yeah. I don't think that meant everyone in the British Parliament. I mean, he just meant the few people that he was in touch with and that were interested in bringing that to the museum.
I mean, even there, when you go and see them, they have leaflets that say something like, what is the controversy? We call them the Parthenon Marbles, I think now, rather than Elgin, because we want to distance.
Yeah, I was so surprised when I discovered you called, like there was a name for them that was the Parthenon Marbles.
We've tried to stop with Elgin Marbles, and there's a leaflet there that says, like, answering the questions that you might have as to why the British Museum has them.
Right.
And has not returned them.
The thing is, I do feel like, for example, stuff that's taken away from like Iraq or like Syria, I do think maybe instead of giving them back right now, they can like come up with some sort of agreement that they will like safeguard it here until it's stable, and then they can return it. But then I feel like with the Parthenon marbles, I do think Greece would be able to take care of it just because they treasure their history like a lot. People do go to Greece a lot for like traveling and stuff like that. So
I get, like, if they had put gunpowder in if they put gunpowder in the Parthenon and then they were like, oh, explode.
That was the Ottomans.
Yeah, I don't mean it's the Greeks, but I mean at the time, and then they took the tools away. I don't know what the historical timeline is there, but they took it away, and then they maybe said, like, we'll take care of them until, someone more.
Yeah, until you used to put in powder in your goddamn monument.
Like, I get that, why you'd want to take them away, but then, keeping them, we're not even linked to the Greeks in terms of maybe having, like, colonized there or something. It just, and well, then,
You did help them during the War of Independence, so it might have been, well, you're a country now, so give us those marbles.
Just maybe that was there would be a good time to return them.
Yeah.
But they're like, no.
Funnily enough, most of the people mostly volunteers and professional soldiers and army that were there, were against taking the marbles back to England. One example is Lord Byron. Lord Byron was, I think he actually was killed. He actually died because he was injured during his time in Greece, fighting as a volunteer. He was one of the main figures, public figures, that were against taking back the marbles to England. But he was crazy, so people were like,
he's nuts.
Uncomprehended.
Being politically correct and due diligent and whatever.
You're ridiculous, Lord Byron. And marbles. Yeah, but funny is that there was apparently one of these requests to take back the statues to Greece. It was a listing of every damage they had suffered in the hands of the British. There's a long history of great failure in preserving these things. So they brought in the best experts they could to preserve these statues because they were obsessed with them in England when they came. So people like Michael Faraday were involved with, which he was known for his work with electricity. So I have no idea why he was an expert in this, but they brought him in and were like, how can we keep this? And of course, imagine science in the 19th century, especially in the beginning, was not as accurate as now. So they were saying things like, we should put this substance in them. I think it will make them white. Because one assumption was that these sculptures were always white, which were not. Yeah. These sculptures were painted originally. Some engineer of some sort was studying the mountain from which the marble was taken to make the statues, and he found out that the marble, after a bunch of centuries, turned yellowish, which was the case with the statues. He didn't get back to England in time to warn them, please don't touch the statues, it's normal that they're yellow. And they started like scrubbing them to try to make them white again. So they're not on all of them, but in some parts of the statues, there's been a loss of around 2.5 millimeters of like surface. That's so much for a statue.
But I also think England like to make up for the fact that I don't want any English people to come for me. But they like to make up for the fact that there isn't many...
They're all like traitor, Mara.
Yeah.
No,
they were like forks and torches outside.
I don't think historically we were at the forefront of...
No, you clearly weren't.
Stuff.
No, that's true.
It's kind of like how sometimes when people are talking about English architecture, right, and I'll be like, historically, so maybe not recently, and I'll just think that everything that they did in England was what they had done in France, like, or in Italy, like the century before. It's just stuff that came over, but none of it has
originated from the UK.
And I'm sure when they were making all the Parthenon marbles and the Parthenon and all that, we were still here in a little hut.
I don't think
rubbing two rocks together, two sticks together to make fire. Like, I think that's why we will rely so heavily on stealing from other people, because we'll be like, oh, you know, we can be great too, because look, we, you know, colonized these people and we took their stuff, and also we saved the Parthenon marbles. And I mean, literally the British Museum is in the shape, or the facade is the Parthenon. It looks exactly, it's the same vibe. It's because we rest on that.
And also the Queen Victoria and Prince Albert had this, they were the monarchs who basically said that museums and culture should be free for the English populace, and they wanted people to be educated and all that. But I think they took it a little bit too far, and they were like, we should bring things from outside to educate them even more. So I think their interest when they took Elgin Marbles was like, oh no, we're like preaching culture and we're like protecting and all that, but they just basically stole them. So basically when there was this petition and they were listing all these horrible things that they did to the marbles, and the British Museum director of the time, and this wasn't that long ago, this was like in the 90s, I think. He basically said, well, mistakes were made.
Oh no.
And yeah, he was basically saying, yeah, people make mistakes, but we had our best intentions at heart.
Sure.
Who's we? Does he mean
like he and his like team of
colleagues,
sculpture destroyers,
of experts?
The best of intentions when we went and stole it.
Yeah.
No.
Or was that the mistake?
No, like he meant when he meant about like preserving them and restoring them. On top of stealing them, they were basically damaging them. And his kind of excuse was that, well, our experts agree that the biggest damage was done by 2,000 years of weathering the statues. We didn't just do that much in comparison. And people were like, oh,
is he saying he should have been there earlier to get them?
Yeah, we really should have been there.
I mean, the
2,000 years ago.
The Brits should have been there on 500 BC.
Parthenon did have like a messy history of like so many things happening to it. Like, I think it was a mosque for a bit. I think it was like a church for a bit. It got changed so many different times, but then that's the history.
Yeah.
That's a bit weird to be like, well, the gunpowder bit's a bit stressful, but like...
But
a little bit.
And before that, it was damaged by artillery during the... Like, Venetians apparently bombarded the city and they were aiming for the Parthenon. And so many things happened in Greece across history, and no one... Like, it's a miracle only 2 wars were responsible for most of the damage. And on top of that, you British people have a very weird and bad reputation when it comes to you preserving things and helping them. And this is an unrelated. This is a story that has nothing to do with the Elgin Marbles, but it pisses me off enough. So basically, there's this cathedral in where I live in Spain called the Santiago Cathedral, and it's famous because it's this like pilgrimage site. So everybody in Europe walks there, and the British people were like, the British Museum people were like, oh, it's great.
The British Museum, in particular, okay.
Yeah, in particular, yeah. So they saw this, that in the facade of the cathedral, in the entrance, there's these statues that are very famous, and it's called the Glory Entrance or something like that. It is a very well-known monument from the Middle Ages in Spain and all that. And they were painted, like they still had their color from the Middle Ages. And this was in the 90s, I think. And the British people were like, we're going to make a cast of this entrance so we can make a model and put it in the British Museum for exhibit. So they put plaster all around it to make a mold. And when they took out the plaster, all the color was in the plaster.
today I wish to identify with my Romanian side.
Yes. Today you're not British.
Only today.
Only today.
Only today.
You are a gypsy today.
No, those are different people altogether. Look, my 23andMe says I have no Romani in me, but I am also Southern European. Like, nobody's asked, but
Yeah,
I just thought I could be
clear.
Greek.
So,
Okay.
so the moral of the story is that the British are very bad at preserving their old stuff from the 19th century. Now is the time when I ask the question: what do you three think? Should the marbles remain in the British Museum? Should they go back to Athens? I think that they should go back to Athens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
I
fact
agree.
that they've actually left the space there.
They've made the
left
nicest
it
museum.
empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also because I do think they want it back, which is the most important, because where it's from, an interest to have it back. Those people have the highest interest in those marbles. It's not really about, I mean, yes, it's great that people get to see them, or more people get to see them, but then in the end, I think it would just make so much more sense for it to be in its historical and geographically correct location.
Yeah, but I also think it's very important to be aware of the history and the fact that the British stole those works. So they definitely should go back.
Yeah.
But that should not be an excuse to just say, oh, we didn't do anything, because we're good again now, we send it back. So it should still be a way to recognize their part in history. I don't know how they should do that, but
I think you could make it great. Sorry.
Like walking from the Acropolis to the museum, they're very close together, to then see the marbles there. It's just like so nice to have it all together, and you have the context from seeing, because they've really put together, I'm sure they've added those of the missing bits into the Parthenon, so you can see it standing today. And then to go down and have a look at the marbles, it's just, would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a great exhibition if you would put in Acropolis Museum like the marbles, and then an entire section about how their horrible history of the Parthenon being used as a gunpowder storage, then the Venetians bombarding it, then the British come and steal it, then they completely destroy them trying to restore them, then these kids write their names in the back and all that, and then you can finish with finally they're back home. And everybody would be cheerful and yay.
And people would really go there to have a look as well, I feel like. Because it'd be so interesting to see it where it's supposed to be, since it's been away from its home for God knows how many years.
It is, of course, it's more practical to go to London and just see all of these things, but it makes them much more genuine if you have to go to the original place to see them.
Yeah, it's like seeing a Japanese garden in Hyde Park. And I was like, bitch, what the fuck? Or a random Buddha statue in the middle of Battersea Park. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, the sphinxes and all these things.
It's so random. But yeah, anyway. Should we move on to Christie's?
Please, Christie. Talk to us about Christie.
Talk about me. Right. So if you don't know, Christie's is an auction house. Recently, there's a sale of 2 sculptures that belongs to the southeastern Igbo community in Africa, actually in Nigeria. And they're wooden sculptures. They're about 1.5 meters high, one male and female, representing deities from the Igbo community, and their hands faces upwards, which means that they're waiting to receive sacrifice and gifts. So what made the sale of these 2 sculptures so controversial was when and where the statues were taken. There's firstly the Hague Convention in 1954, which protects cultural property in the event of armed conflict. And Nigeria joined the convention in 1961. The civil war that happened where the sculptures were taken happened in 1966 till 70. Technically 67 till 70. And Nigeria joined the convention in 61. So it should technically have been protected by the Hague Convention, and it would have rendered these sculptures being out of Nigeria illegal. Before the Hague Convention, Nigeria already had an antiquities ordinance law which made trade of stolen cultural artifacts illegal in 1963. Plus, we all know about the 1970 UNESCO Convention that bans all international trade of stolen artifacts. So Mr. Adebi, the legal advisor for the Nigerian National Commission for Museums and Monuments, added that Nigeria was saddened by the sale and that Christie's ought not to be dealing in Nigerian equities that were probably taken out at the time of conflict. He added that there's never going to be a universal principle that says something made by my forebears belong to you in perpetuity because you bought it in an auction house. African antiquities will always be African, just like a Da Vinci will always be European. It's kind of like what you said about the Elgin Marbles should be like in Greece. A prominent art
That's the most political answer ever.
Yeah.
Okay, of course, they are African, yeah. Hello, Mr. German, here's this African thing. But they're African.
Yeah. And also a prominent art historians also called on Christie's to cancel the sale. And a professor told the BBC that the two objects were looted from shrines during the Biafra War, which began with two coups in 1966 and officially ended in 1970. The professor is from Princeton University, and he said that they could not have acquired the sculptures legally as they were removed during the Civil War when the Igbo community attempted to secede from Nigeria, but in the end they surrendered. And he added, to pretend we don't matter or what we think doesn't matter is for me a recast of colonial arrogance that we are still dealing with in other parts of African continent. And another art historian from Nigeria's Nnamdi Azikiwe University says that more information is needed. He says that in the past, local people choose to throw away ritual objects to sell them. And it happened when people felt that the objects was no longer potent or stopped working as a protection, like these ritual sculptures. And also he suggested that the arrival of Christian missionaries in the area might also be why some local people began to throw away these or like sell ritual objects, adding that some people were persuaded to do away with their gods, idols, and statues. So he really said what he's really saying is that if these sculptures are genuinely important to the Igbo identity, they should be the ones making for the claim for the object instead of like these art historians in Europe, because the sale happened in Paris. And so yes, because the community, the Igbo community, are the people who has the highest interest in those objects. Christie's, on the other hand, defended the auction, sold the sculpture for just under £195,000 in Paris, with a pre-sale estimate of 250 to 350,000 euros. But obviously, it's still sold quite a lot, but not really reaching what the estimate was because of all these like controversies around it. And Christie rejected the claim that the sculptures were stolen and said that the sale was perfectly legal. And in their statement, I quote, "The auction house believes that there is no evidence these statues were removed from their original location by someone who was not local to the area, or that the area they came from at the time they were acquired was part of the conflict at that time. Our understanding is that even prior to the conflict, local agents were trading objects such as these and were starting to circulate more widely. And there hasn't been any suggestion that the statues were subject to improper export." Yeah, but then there's like a lot of issues around its provenance as well, because in the catalog it says in situ, which makes it very, very vague, that they can't pinpoint where did the previous owner, which is the French collector who died in 2001, they couldn't really figure out where did he get it from. So the guy who bought it is called Jacques Kerchache, and people are saying there's like, so that's like the French art collector. So there's like questions about how this sculpture got to Paris, and so this guy, the French art collector, he's also close advisor to the former French president. And Christie says that Mr. Kerchache didn't travel to Nigeria in 1968 or 69. So the sculpture was acquired in 68/69, which makes it very sketchy.
Right.
And the fact that he got it during that time suggests that local agents were involved in initial trading, probably in Cameroon, before shipment to Europe. So there's like people trying to figure out if he got it from Cameroon or did he get it when it's in Europe. And it's like it recently just got sold, and
is there
lots
any
of people,
strong petition for them to go back, or is it just some people who are
yes. There's 2,000 people who signed a petition to cancel the sale. They didn't really say anything about returning it. They just want it to like cancel the sale. And the local community in Nigeria didn't really say anything, but also possibly because they're not aware of it.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because mostly these things, like it's very easy to tackle these things when they happen in the age of colonialism, and it's basically one big power stealing things from another.
Yeah.
But when there's all this like shady business thing happening so recently, it's more different to track down what exactly is the illegality, like,
because it does seem like he did buy it. Like it's not that he stole it, but then it's more about, did he pay someone to steal it?
Right.
Why did the local people sell it? Did the local people who did sell it, or like people in the trade, steal it during the conflict?
Yeah, were they allowed to sell it?
Yeah, exactly. But which they're not allowed to, because
is it like a
Nigeria?
Like the convention thing you said?
Yeah. So like they've already have their own laws about trading stolen artifacts.
Interesting.
So like for them, it's already illegal. Plus the international ones, which they signed in 1961.
It's interesting they still did the sale, even though...
Yeah, so they kept on saying that it's perfectly legal, and they apologized that saying in situ was misleading, and they changed it, they took it down.
How much did it sell it for?
£195,000.
Do you think that's the correct price?
But they estimated it to be like twice. Or...
No. So that's like in euros. So I think that £195 in euros would be around just in the lower estimate.
Yeah, it would be around 160, I think.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they still managed to do quite well.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that it could possibly be taken away.
Yeah. I couldn't really find who bought it.
I wouldn't want people to know that I bought it.
Yeah, but then at the same time, you'd be quite of a terrible person.
Yeah.
To actually buy it.
But that's why I think the person they just wouldn't want to comment, you know, for the press, and they just wouldn't want the extra scrutiny for having bought it.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like businessmen or something, they don't want their
do you know it's bought by a private person, or is it bought by...
Private.
No.
I feel like a gallery would... it'd be too... it'd be too...
It would avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then again, at the end of the day, Christie's is a company and they just want to make money. So unless it's completely illegal and they would completely be burned to the ground if they did it, I'm sure they will push it as much as they can.
Yeah.
Because they, of course, auction houses, when it comes to antiquities and this sort of controversial items, they would always be like, no, we respect the heritage so much, and oh, this is African, and yes. But at the end of the day, they're auction houses, you know? They just want to sell it for the most money. They're not museums or galleries. They're just there for the money.
I do find it interesting that they decided to to sell it because
to go on with it, right? Yeah, I was quite surprised.
Yeah, because recently it's been such a hot topic. In
of like stolen objects, colonial goods, especially in African artifacts.
Exactly.
There's been like so many controversies around it, and like and actually funny to note that the fact that the sculpture sold in Paris, but then the French government, Cameron, he was saying he would want to return thousands of artifacts to Egypt and Africa and Iraq in 2018, but hasn't had any follow-up yet. Yeah, so
interesting.
I just feel like it's such a shame that all those beautiful artworks are not where they're supposed to be, and that they're falling victim of capitalism.
I think it's very sad that they are taking advantage of, you know, unstable things like warfare and like rebellions or political instability and all that to find shady ways to sneak around laws and taking all of these things out of her.
Yeah.
And then there's so many, you know, you burn so many bridges behind you that it's such a long process to actually demonstrate it's illegal, or you have to bring them back, and by then the sale has already been gone.
Yeah.
You just put in more.
Because like taking them away in the first place is already questionable enough.
Yeah, but then you sell it, and then, you know, imagine now you actually have a petition to bring them back, and it, and all that, and now the person who's bought it is like, well, I bought it, now it's mine. And you have to start another trying to.
If that person that bought it now in a few months comes on the media and saying, I'm going to bring it, you know, I'm going to give it back, would he then be perceived as, you know, the hero of the story?
If they were to do it now, yes, I think so. If now it's like, yes, it was me, the artifact savior, yes, I think that would be an interesting thing to do. But bear in mind that capitalism works on demand and offer. So if you start having like altruists who buy artifacts to bring them back to the original countries, you're only incentivizing people to steal more things to sell it to them. So
yeah, as well. And then again, if somebody would just come and say like, hey, I'm going to give it back, so like very suddenly, I think that country or that you know, organization would also be like, hey, what do I need to do with it now? Because, you know, you suddenly get this artifact back, which is very valuable, and then but you're not prepared to be able to take care of it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's back to what Christie said before. There should be some kind of agreement of the moment a war starts or something like that happens, there should be a protocol to maybe take away all the valuable stuff, put them somewhere safe in nearby country or somewhere like that, and then bring it back. But then
I don't think that's possible. It's kind of like...
Well, I mean, it's kind of difficult when you have like big-ass statues and all that, but imagine, I don't know. So it's kind of what they did in the Second World War. The Americans did that. Have you ever read a book called The Monuments Men?
Yes.
I saw the movie.
Well, the movie's terrible, by the way. The movie's horrible. But the book is great because it's about like all these art historians and art experts and all these academics who would go to France and Germany occupied Europe during the D-Day invasion and all that. And they would find paintings stored by the Germans and kind of safeguard them until the conflict was over. And they brought back most of them. Of course, not all of them, because we don't live in a perfect world. But I mean, can you actually complain that they actually did most of the job? True. Of course, there should be I'm not gonna come up with a solution now because I'm just a man. But
Spanish man.
I'm just a Spanish man with a dream. But there should be a way of ensuring this thing is not used as an excuse to, I'm gonna keep this because you clearly cannot take care of it.
Don't you think that if it would be perceived as being obnoxious when there would be another conflict in the Middle East, and then the West would come and say, hey, you're having a little issue here. We're going to take these things, safeguard them for you. You fight your little thingy, and then we give them back.
Well, yeah, but...
Well, obviously it has to be, you know, that country reaching out.
Yeah. There should be a convention between the countries. It's not just like, hey man, it's me again. It's like you've got some war there, mate.
Back again.
Yeah. But then again, imagine in 100 years, France and Spain are like, yeah, we should have invaded you so long ago. Now we're like, oh, Iraq, can you please take care of the Mona Lisa? Yeah, of course, mate.
I don't think they're yeah, of course, mate. Hear it.
Whatever you need. This is a very controversial topic, and a lot of solutions that seem very, because like on some level, I completely agree with the fact that you cannot have antiquities somewhere like the Middle East, especially in some countries right now.
Yeah.
Because you get ISIS and they just bomb it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or, you know, the Buddhas in Afghanistan were completely destroyed by the Taliban. The entire Palmyran citadel and all their temples were destroyed by ISIS in Palmyra. So it's just, you completely lose that forever. Because during 3 years, some radical people are ruling the country. Sadly, England is way more stable than that. And as much Brexit as you get, nobody's going to go to the British Museum and burn it. Or
yeah, they're going to get stopped before they put little things in their Sainsbury's bags and try to take them out.
And they just storm off, So
Sainsbury's bags and then.
But then again, the fact that you have the West kind of being like the safe place to bring these things perpetuates the fantasy that, you know, we're the civilized people and they are the savages who just fight each other and they cannot take care of this. They cannot see the value of these things and they just destroy them. So I think
that is different though. Like they destroy those artifacts because they think that they're culturally valuable. That's why they destroy it.
Well, yeah, that's true. Or because they offend religious values or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, you know,
there's many reasons why they do it, but
it's like Catholics burning Protestant stuff back in like 16th century.
You were there.
So annoying.
So annoying, yeah.
But then the other the plaque that I was talking about, the tablet.
Oh right.
So it was in the US, also with Christie's. Very exciting. Having a great month for Christie's. So apparently
they're gonna go after us.
Yeah, they might.
Hit like button, or we're gonna get destroyed by Christie's, please.
Or Sotheby's can back us up.
Yeah, maybe start a war between auction houses.
Let's get Phillips.
Never heard of these people.
War of the Roses, Volume 2.
Oh, did you know that it's actually a war fought between cousins?
Oh, really?
The War of the Roses?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was family, just fighting.
Yeah, it's just family.
My dad talks about it.
And the funny thing is that none of the one of the houses that started the war was completely wiped out by the middle of it, and another house had to come in and be like, okay, now it's us. So yeah, it was the Lancaster against the York, and then the Lancasters were completely wiped out, and the Tudor were like, hey man, it's me.
What's up?
My dad talks about it all the time because he's from Yorkshire and it's the peak of their history.
Yeah. Oh, the one thing that gives them relevance.
Yeah.
The only thing.
The one thing. A guy from Yorkshire had me. It's two things now.
Okay, I get it. For a second, I thought it was a very shady thing to say, but yes, I now understand what you mean.
Sure. Okay.
Yes, you are the second thing that happened in Yorkshire.
The second.
Yeah. War of the Roses.
Second importance.
Yeah.
But what's up with the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Okay, so the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's a 3,500-year-old artifact, which was from what is now Iraq. It was sold to a Christian museum co-founded by the president of retailer Hobby Lobby. And
his name is Hobby Lobby.
I think so, apparently.
Is he or what?
Maybe. And this Christian museum is called like Museum of the Bible.
That's my favorite museum.
What were they doing with the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I don't know.
In the Museum of the Bible.
Yeah. So the tablet was bought from Christie's in a private sale in 2014 for £1.36 million or $1.67 million for our American listeners. And Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York says that the tablet was illegally imported into the U.S. The prosecutors did not name the auction house in their public statement, but then Lobby House filed a lawsuit against Christie's in relation to that tablet, like the next morning, basically.
Okay.
And Christie's responded the lawsuit was linked to an allegedly illegal conduct predating Christie's involvement, meaning Christie's acquired the artifact when it was already in the US, and how it got into the US has nothing to do with Christie's. And according to the civil suit filed by the US prosecutors, the tablet was originally purchased by an antique dealer in 2003 in London. And in 2007, the dealer sold it to another buyer for $50,000 and allegedly included a fake document claiming that it has been obtained at an auction house in the US in 1981, which obviously after UNESCO, so seems to be fine. It was then sold to Hobby Lobby in 2014.
I can't.
How can you take that seriously, Hobby Lobby?
I can't. And then 3 years later, when the Museum of the Bible's curator asked for clarity of the tablet's origins, Christie's allegedly withheld information, including the fake letter, which Christie knew would not withstand scrutiny. And Iraq's Ministry of Antiquities said that they're working in trying to find out whether the tablet was one of the thousands of items stolen from its museum in 1991. And note that at least 9 out of 13 regional museums in Iraq were looted that year in 1991 when Saddam Hussein's regime lost control of certain parts of the country. Hobby Lobby, in the end, he was fined with $3 million and forced to hand over thousands of smuggled ancient artifacts from Iran, which it had bought for the Bible Museum. And in March this year, the museum's board chairman also disclosed that it discovered another 5,000 fragments and 6,500 clay objects in its collection with insufficient provenance, and said that they would return it back to Egypt and Iraq.
The length at which the Bible Museum has to go to be interesting.
There's so many things in the Bible, and you have to take one that it's not there at all.
There's so much Christian stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Too much.
Yeah.
And they're just...
Hobby Lobby was in his office thinking, you know what this thing needs? Some Mesopotamian
It's like,
stuff.
wait, I've named it the Bible Museum. It's too late. I don't actually want it to be about that.
I mean, it's also really hard for the Americans to find stuff about the Bible when they only got technically 300 years of history.
But how big can the Museum of the Bible be? Because it's not a museum of Christianity, it's a museum of the Bible.
I feel like we should go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Javier's paying for another trip.
If we hit 100,000 likes, we're going to the Museum of the Bible.
After Texas.
Where is the Museum of the Bible, by the way? Where in the US?
Chris, where is it?
Washington.
Oh, it's quite far from Texas,
city?
So we'll have to do 2 separate trips.
No, we'll just drive.
The 4 of us in a car for 3 days driving.
What do you mean 3 days? We're 3 months. We have to go from Texas to fucking Washington.
Why can't we just take a plane?
Why can't we take a train?
Because where's the fun in that? There's so many museums of Bibles and stuff we can see on the way.
With some Bible music, it should be fun.
Yeah.
I'll do
some Bible music.
Yeah, we can hit them Christian channels of music and
yeah, exactly.
You know that they must have so many channels with just
go through all the conservative.
I was amazed when I was there, and I discovered every genre you can imagine in music. There's that experimental synthetic black Norwegian metal. There's that in the Christian version. It's insane.
I would love to hear it.
I've heard it. It's there's just really good songs. Oh my god, this is so good. And I listened to lyrics and I was like, oh my god, it's about Christians.
Also, fun thing. When you have black metal that's Christian, you call it white metal, which is very funny. When an American redneck tells you, have you listened to white metal? I'm like...
The thing is, but then can they not just call it I don't know, pure metal, because again, like Jesus is not white.
No.
Well, you tell them that, they'll probably shoot you with one of the multiple weapons.
Shotguns.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love a shotgun.
Maybe
Underneath the
we
hot
could
sun.
create a rendition of the classic hit Britney Spears Toxic, but Christian.
With a gospel choir.
I'm holy.
Yeah.
Did you know that I'm holy?
Holy.
1,000 likes and Finn will write that for music and Christy will sing it.
I'll write a Christian version of Toxic.
Yes.
1,000 likes. Holy version of Christian version of Toxic.
1,000? Have we
1,000.
changed?
Yeah.
1,000, yeah.
1,000. Yeah.
1,000.
10. Just 10.
10 likes and we'll do it, yes.
That's too easy.
What happened with the Epic of Gilgamesh in the end? It's still in the Bible Museum?
I don't know.
Hobby Lobby.
They said that they're going to put it back.
Hobby Lobby sounds like the arch enemy of like a cartoon series.
Yeah.
It sounds like willy-nilly.
Join Kristy, Mara, Finn and Javier.
Sounds like
Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby is attacking the town. What are they going to do?
Yeah, so he has like give it back and then he got fined 3 million. Yeah, that's it.
There's probably there'll be like more like information on it, but it's so soon after it's happened.
Well, it happened so it got reported on the 20th of May.
Yeah.
So not much has happened since then, like a month or so, but I suppose there's a lot more stuff that needs to be like concluded. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are returning it, supposedly.
Okay.
They probably have to find out where each individual artwork, its provenance.
Yeah, I mean, like, they searched through their archives and there's like more than 10,000 stuff that doesn't have good provenance.
But then I'm thinking about our trip to the Bible Museum. Will it even be open? Because they won't have anything.
Well, but then we can just roam around DC then.
Cool too. Go to all the monuments of their.
Yeah,
Great.
I've actually done that with my friend.
I don't know if
around
I'm
Washington,
interested going there. I don't know if I want to go there. I'd want to go to like New Orleans.
Yes.
Different vibe.
Different.
Well, I guess.
But I would love to go there.
Jazz.
10,000 likes.
And we're all above 21 now, so we can drink.
Yeah. We won't be drinking alcohol if our Christian hit goes viral.
We have to.
What if it's holy wine?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're drinking wine. We're drinking.
Yeah, we're drinking the blood of Christ. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if he wants us to black out on it.
If I was Christ, I would want my followers to black out on my blood. Yes.
Yeah, and then you get to see him like for a second, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm a believer."
Oh, bro.
Yeah. I think the moral of the story is that it's controversial and it shouldn't be done, but I don't think we've come up with a clear answer to what should be done instead.
Well, I think
I think a clear answer, not necessarily a clear answer, but like is that again to be conscious of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And beware of the history sat behind it, and at the same time appreciate it, because
I think it would do much better for these institutions if until they figure out a way to give them back or something like that, change the narrative of how they display them, and instead of being welcome to the wonders of the Acropolis, say, so this is the story of how Thomas Bruce took it. And they would tell you these things about the fake Italian copy of the letter by the Sultan.
Even the fact that they're displayed eye level and they all should be, meters high up is again a bit weird. Like the sculptors, it's very well done, so it's not like they did a botched job and you see it from far away, it looks amazing, close up it's not. It's amazing anyway, but it's just been changed. And actually in the museum in Athens, it's higher up, so you're looking up at it rather than being eye level.
Yeah.
Site specificity.
Yeah, site specific. Okay, well this has been amazing, and I love you all.
Please give us 1,000 likes.
I respect your cultures.
Yes.
Wow.
If we ever find something that's yours, we'll send it back to your country.
Not Belgium.
If you ever find something Belgian, just keep it in your museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need it back.
Especially if it's about churning butter, keep it.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. If you especially loved our episode, we would love it if you gave it a 5-star rating and a review, and even consider taking a screenshot of this episode and posting it on your Instagram stories. That way we know that you loved it and other people can find our podcast as well. If you're not subscribed yet, again, what are you doing? Subscribe and get notified every time we publish a new episode. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Chart Podcast, and if you want to see our faces while we talk, find us on YouTube at Chart Podcast as well. We are Chart, and we'll hope we'll meet you again at some point in the near future. Take care. Chart out.
Love you.
See you.
Love you.
Later.
Bye. Bye.